Hi, Edgar. Are you able to hear me and see my screen? You want to put yes or no in the chat, maybe? Thank you. Great. Thanks a lot. I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago where I had my mic off for a while and no one said anything. And then finally someone like after 10 minutes said, well, we can't hear you. So, oh, great. Maybe I should check all of that. Okay. I only see you, but that's okay. I'm going to start because I do some intros and stuff like that. And because it's recorded, I'm just going to do it the whole thing through. I did put a link if folks want to view live transcriptions while they're happening. I'm going to start that now, and then what that will do will open it up in another window. As I talk, you'll see words start to play, and there we go. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. It's a little earlier here. I'm in San Francisco. I wanted to start the talk by expressing a little bit of vulnerability. This is a presentation about my path to Drupal contributions. And given the nature of these talks living on the internet forever, I do omit some of my personal journey. But I'm open to conversations if people have questions and want me to fill in the missing details. So it's finding a niche in open source contributions. And I'm going to talk about things I've done in my past, things I do in my present, and how all of these experiences helped shape me being a top contributor to the Drupal project. My name is Amy June. It's one word, title camel case. I am the community ambassador and QA engineer at Canopy Studios. I use the pronouns she and her. Canopy is who I work with, and we're hiring. You know, we're a great company. We work in open source website strategy, design, development, and support. We sort of work with the whole life cycle of a website. And I introduced myself and I said I was a community ambassador and QA engineer. QA engineer, that's probably something you've heard of. You know, I test user experience and accessibility, and I make sure all of our websites are built to the specifications. But community ambassador, that's not a role you hear about every day. And it's a very unique role that allows me to give back to open source communities like WordPress and Drupal. I have the privilege of getting paid to contribute. And I really think of it as an exercise in my company, Canopy's corporate citizenship of using free software. You know, there's a certain part that you give back and they give me and they give my contributions back. But I want to talk about some of the things that I do day to day and week to week. I'm on the community working group community health team. I and others are responsible for basically developing and producing community initiatives. We work on inline and now virtual workshops, of course. We have certain things that we're putting together, and this is beyond the conflict resolution side of the community working group. I do a lot of documentation on Drupal.org, both for the Drupal project itself and contributed projects and maintainer guides. You know, for folks that don't know, documentation guide maintainer really means you work on the official guides that are governed by a certain set of people because they're held to an established standard and there's more of an editorial process. But I maintain guides for documenting how to document to your project. I know that sounds kind of meta, but I also, because of my role in the community, I help maintain the guide for event planning information, and then I work on a couple of the contributed modules that Canopy supports as well. I'm an inclusion and accessibility advocate. I believe that the community is stronger when everyone is included. And that doesn't mean just invited to the community. That means actually including people in the community. And that's like my whole mission in life, is because I love everyone to be part of everything. I participate in mentoring at organized Drupal events. And then, you know, we hear this verbiage, come for the code, stay for the community. But it's really about community connections, connecting people through code and any other ways that can bring folks together. And one of those ways we come together is through events. And so what do I do as a community ambassador at events? It depends on the camp, but I do just about anything. I volunteer, I speak, I provide trainings, I help organize contribution space. Because the way I figure, if I'm already attending a camp, I might as well volunteer and help out. How did I get here? You know, how do I fit this niche? It's been a while in the making. So I want to like really reflect on some of the things I've done in my past life that help, you know, shape my present. What did my life look like before I got involved in open source? I'm the youngest sibling of many. I grew up in rural Northern California most of my adolescent life. You know, I went to local community college and then the university. I'm the youngest sibling. You know, apple trees, cows, marching band, the whole thing. When I was young, I spent my holidays and vacations traveling and visiting relatives, you know, New York, Philadelphia, Arizona, all over the United States. During college, I took a much needed sabbatical and traveled all over North America, the continent, living out of a Dodge cab over camper, you know, taking no money, like just selling jewelry enough to like get from the next town and have enough food. And really, it's mostly about getting on to the next adventure. I could have gone to Europe, but a friend of mine reminded me that my own continent has cultures that are vast. You know, Kansas and Texas are nothing like Northern California. Guatemala and Belize have ecosystems and culture that Oregon just can't reproduce. I do hold a few degrees, but caregiving has been a really major part of my life. You know, at the Quaker Church, I'm a Sunday school teacher. I work in the nursery and I mentor the youth group. I'm a nurse by trade. You know, I started volunteering at a nursing home, serving coffee on Fridays and pushing wheelchairs at the county fair. I visit sick and elderly folks, you know, working, but I dabbled in restorative care therapy and I worked in the ICU and maternity, but the first time someone passed away when I was with them, I knew hospice was my calling. I felt blessed that this person at this specific time chose right now to pass away, and I was with them for that journey. And I'm the mother of 2 children. They're now grown and on their own and making their own decisions. So there's a story behind Volkswagen Chick. You know, being the youngest of siblings came with challenges, and one of them was by the time I was of driving age, the only car left to hand down was the crappy Volkswagen. It was one of those cars where you stopped at every stoplight and you would have to get out of the car real quick and jiggle some wires and put on some tubes because they would blow off, you know, with the vacuum leak. But I had a book that was called The Volkswagen Guide for the Complete Idiot, and I managed just fine. Fast forward to after college, I took a job at a Volkswagen machine shop in Santa Cruz. And later in life, I went back to university and I studied communications, intercultural, small group, interpersonal communications, and I worked at a human resource department at a Bay Area college. So what did all these experiences teach me all these lifetimes ago? It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. We all die. We all meet our makers, and everybody poops. We are all the same, yet very different. Every person has their own sense of self and beauty. You can look the same on the outside and be different on the inside. And then you can look very different on the outside, but be very similar in the inside. It's about self-expression. And it's important to create opportunities to help people that have different cultural and ethnic backgrounds, you know, to help them find common ground and respect their differences and appreciate what everyone can bring to the conversation. And it's about not making assumptions, you know, because you can't make assumptions about a person's political stance, gender, socioeconomic levels, family composition, sexuality. Assumptions can really build walls. So all these things made me realize that we all experience love and fear, and we all come from our own circumstances. You know, our past is not always reflected in our outward appearances. You can really never know what someone else's journey was like. We all have our own beliefs. But it was ready for a change for me. And this was just a few years ago when I was like 40 years old. And the story is too personal to share during a presentation that will live on the internet forever. But ironically enough, the fact that everybody poops is one of the reasons I got out of nursing. You know, getting home to discover someone else's poop on your elbow can only happen so many times before you pack up your ball and go home. So this is where my journey into Drupal starts. I don't have a computer science degree. At the time, I didn't have any command of any programming language. Of course, I held the obligatory WordPress blog during college. I took some HTML and CSS classes, but that's about it. And I had a computer. And some of you may have seen this illustration before. It's the Drupal learning curve. So why would you learn Drupal? So it all started with doing some content entry. But soon the content entry wasn't enough for me. I wanted to be able to dictate more of the look and the feel of the site. I learned what fields were, and I was shown the administrative UI. I attended my first tech event in 2015 with Stanford Web Camp and Bad Camp. Wow, what an experience. You know, it was different than any sort of like, you know, camp or conference I'd been to before. And then after doing some research, I decided to take a deep dive, and I took Drupal Career Online with Mike Anello through Drupal Easy. So this is an image of sort of my modified Drupal learning curve. You know, the traditional timeline is to start with that content entry and site building and then move to code. You know, I graduated from Drupal Easy, and they helped me get an internship at a support in the support department at a mission-driven agency, but I had a tough time. I'm not going to lie. Code was hard for me. The other developers made it look super easy, but I finally asked for help. And my mentor at the time said, you know what? I know you don't know anything, and I've been waiting for you to ask. And it got easier once I knew that it was okay not to know what I was doing. It took being vulnerable. And as a side note, I still attend weekly Drupal Easy office hours because having that support and mentorship is super important, because Drupal is hard. But you know what? Drupal is more than just code. And I discovered code wasn't for me. So through that mentorship, I learned to be confident, you know, and we should all remember that, how should I put this? Confident is specific to its domain. You know, I had to learn to have the confidence to tell folks that I was a novice. And that's something that shaped my path to contributions, because unique experiences bring unique opportunities. I am a very firm believer that we must include everyone. It takes everyone to build a better world, and that extends to building a better web. You know, being a hospice nurse, I understand how some folks have challenges accessing the web, not only for folks who live with physical disabilities, but those who live with cognitive and behavioral challenges as well. And it goes back to making those assumptions, you know. There are all different kinds of ways to surf the web, but think about all the ways we develop the web as well. You know, having an accessible website is important, but also having that accessible back end is important as well, because people who contribute to Drupal have challenges too. So, you know, think about it. Not everyone has access to high-speed internet or a computer with enough power to run Docker. There are social and economic barriers as well. And I found that most of the ways I give back to Drupal come back to making sure that everyone is included, regardless of race, gender, sexuality, knowledge, abilities, all of those things. But I do have to admit to everyone, you know, that picture I painted of myself doesn't tell the whole story. from the outside, you know, I had privilege growing up. I'm a white woman living in Northern California, but you can't tell from looking at me that I'm from a broken home. You can't tell from looking at me that I had to rely on scholarships and financial aid to go to college. And you can't look at me and know that I live with hidden disabilities. I might have worked at a Volkswagen machine shop, but did you know that I was actually told to stay in the back so customers wouldn't see me because they didn't want the customers to know a woman was working on their car. That's my first job. And I might be a public speaker now, but I used to be terrified to get up in front of folks and give a presentation, you know? So assumptions are weird things. And this for me, well, how should I put this? It means removing the barriers to contributions, not just lowering them, but removing them entirely, because that's important. So now I'm going to talk about how our mistakes can actually help us along our path to Drupal contributions. You know, having compassion for yourself helps us to take risks because then we realize it's okay to fail. And I really do believe that confidence is linked to doing, and experiencing failure brings resilience. Underconfidence can usually result in a lack of action. It's the cyclical thing that we can get trapped in. So I want to take a minute to just thank my mentors, because they're the most important part of a contributor's journey. I'm not going to name all of them. You know, people looking at the slides could see these, but it's important to acknowledge and check in with your mentors and show gratitude along the way as well. And I do have to say that each of these people on my mentoring list on my Drupal.org profile has definitely shaped what I do today by either giving me opportunities or giving me encouragement. And one of the simplest ways that we can give back to Drupal is through documentation. I love contributing to documentation. And my past life as a Volkswagen enthusiast really prepared me for this. Going back to being a woman at the machine shop, not only, you know, was it hard, but it was also hard to ask for help. So I relied on technical manuals to extend my knowledge. And if steps were skipped on how to perform a service, I was really stuck. It made me aware of how truly documentation should be written for everyone. And who better to test documentation and improve the documentation than new contributors, you know? My passion for keeping those beloved relics on the road translated into a methodical and logical approach that drives much of coding, you know, and really kind of drives my approach to QA and problem solving as well. The issue queue, you know, I didn't touch core for well, at first I didn't touch core at all. I stuck to contributed projects. You know, once I kind of got into the swing of things, I felt more comfortable and I tackled an issue marked novice. I painstakingly went through the code looking for spelling mistakes. It was a spelling mistake issue. I felt really accomplished. You know, I posted my file on the issue queue, but then the core maintainer made a comment asking me if I had grepped the issue. The tone wasn't very nice. And the assumption was made that I knew what grep meant. Remember, this was an issue marked novice. And just the way that core maintainer treated me in the issue queue, it was enough to keep me out of the core issue queue for almost a year. But then I started testing Drupal 8 and I found a UI bug in views. Well, views is in core now. And I thought, this is perfect. I'm going to get back in. I was so excited. I created an issue. I submitted a patch. And I was so intent on the one mistake I found, I didn't see that there was a grammar issue in the same line. So it was a polar opposite response from that maintainer. You know, she said, oh, I can see this is your core, you know, your first core patch. And she was super nice. You know, she saw I was a novice and she embraced that. And she gave me words of encouragement. And it made me think that the secret to confidence might be in those failures. I was so intent on that I found that one error, that I did not look at the rest of the line. So now what do I do when I find something? I make sure I read the whole paragraph, So, those mistakes build resilience, and it taught me to take more risks, and that mistakes really provide that fast track for growth. I didn't mention this before, but part of my struggles with the Drupal code and getting into the Drupal workflow was local environments. Local environments are a nightmare for me. They were then, they are now. They make me cry every single time I have to set them up. But you know what I discovered? You don't have to have a local environment to give back to Drupal. I discovered Simply Test Me, and my life was changed forever. This browser-based server, everyone can spin up a project. You can test features, you can test patches, you can use it to market Drupal, you can collaborate with others because it's online. But shortly after I started using it, I found a comment saying that the forecast of the project was cloudy with a sense of deprecation. And I panicked. So you know what I did? I talked with the maintainer of the project, who was one of my mentors, and I became an advocate for the service. I now test the new platform, I help with documentation, and I help market it. So it comes from that local environment frustration that I found a niche of, contributing back to Simply Test Me, which ultimately lowers the barrier to Drupal entry for many folks. Live demos are weird. I don't know how many of you have given them, but beforehand you think about all the ways they could go wrong, and they probably will. And live demos used to make me nervous, but now I realize that we're all better when we witness people make some mistakes for a number of reasons. First, it shows that we're all human. And second, now my live demo has turned into a live troubleshooting event that everyone can help with. So again, that failure, if you just flip it around, is really a success. And conflicts happen. I'm the youngest sibling of many. I once had two teenage boys living with me, my sons. Words can be tricky and emotions can run high, especially when folks from all different avenues and walks of life collaborate with each other. Fast forward to now, I work a lot in the issue queue, and I'm in Drupal Slack a lot. I see firsthand how language can break down, from the use of, something like, hey guys, to people who use language that takes the shape of gatekeeping knowledge. I joined the community health team this year, and not only do we plan and provide those workshops like I talked about when I did the introduction, but we're actively developing online tools to assist improving communication between community members. They're called community nudges. So, seeing that conflict firsthand made me realize how powerful it is to have measures in place that create that conflict from happening, from escalating it. My first Drupal camp was such a delight. I can't remember if it was Stanford camp or Bad Camp, but not because of the content delivery, because this was before I even knew what Drupal was, but because everyone was so welcoming. But I now know that not everyone has that same experience. Some people don't feel as welcomed when they come to Drupal events. So mentoring is an important part of my niche in Drupal contributions. And your mentoring should not only include like knowledge transfer, but also community culture as well. So we think about mentoring at the contribution level, the community level, and at the event level. First-time attendees should feel welcome and have folks to help guide them through that experience. I am a very passionate person, and I've said this, I just love everyone, and I love empowering people to contribute. Drupal runs, 3% of the web? Think about how many millions of websites you have influenced by think of how many websites you've influenced by contributing back, not only code, but marketing and inviting new members to the community. But I do admit that first time I attended a contribution workshop, at a DrupalCon, I was lost. My experience was an hour of trying to download a package of tools, and by the end of the day, no one had demoed a patch, which got me thinking. I know how to contribute to Drupal, important. I know how to write a patch. And I know how to show folks how to write a patch. And I know that you don't need a local environment to give back. So I decided to take it further, and I started talking about non-code contributions. I took that first-time contributor workshop and made it into a very user-friendly session that I give, and also first-time contributor workshops at different camps I attend. And I don't gear it just to coders. For everyone. I always say, like, marketers can come because there's documentation to work on. You know, there's all different things that you can give back to Drupal. And those first-time contributor workshops, I think, by adding all of the non-code things, really expands the base of our contribution. Following your passions is super important because, again, unique experiences bring unique opportunities. And giving back to the community can take so many shapes. There's contributed projects, modules, and themes. You know, you can work on projects that excite you. You can develop community projects. You know, they don't just have to be code-based projects. You can have a community project on a camp or a local meetup that you run. And you can give contribution credits to your speakers, to your volunteers, to your sponsors. You know, because, again, if we're always talking about there's so many ways to give back to Drupal than code, then that attribution process is important as well. BOFs are a great way to give back to Drupal, especially if you're passionate about something. BOFs are birds of a feather, you know, those informal presentations that bring us together to talk about something. And they don't have to be tech related, you know. The Drupal Coffee Exchange brings people together through coffee. How fun is that? We run a mail exchange a few times a year, and then we meet at local camps. Well, we also meet at virtual camps too. This morning I went to New England Drupal Camp at the crack of dawn my time, and they were having the coffee BOF. You know, BOFs can be a wonderful way to bring folks together. And it also, you find folks who you share common interests and passion beyond the tech. I am passionate about events, you know, and so I co-organize a couple of meetups. Well, I co-organize a lot of meetups, but these are two of my favorite meetups. San Francisco Drupal Users Group, because I live in the Bay Area, and it's a chance for all of us who live locally to come together. And then we meet and go to the local watering hole afterward and have social hour. I co-organize Ally Talks, which is Accessibility Talks, A11Y Talks. It's a virtual monthly meetup where we bring speakers and conversations, and we talk about the topic of digital accessibility. And I love sharing what I know. I love empowering women and people from other underrepresented groups to speak at meetups and Drupal camps and Word camps. I started helping with the speaker diversity workshops in the WordPress space in a train the trainers thing, where I would run workshops on how to train trainers, how to run the workshops. But now I lead workshops across a few open source communities, and Drupal included, you know, and I think it's really important that I mentor another trainer while doing these workshops, so more folks can give them, and then more folks have the confidence to be speakers. You know, the more trainers we have, the more speakers we have, then the more diverse lineups we have when we go to Drupal camps. Because I know it was hard for me to submit my first talk. I looked at the roster sheet and I didn't see a whole lot of women on there. So it made me nervous, you know. So by having these speaker diversity workshops, it kind of gets more underrepresented communities because they see more people that look like them on the attendee list, on the organizer level, on the speaker level. And, you know, those are the those are the things that I do, but what can we do as a community that sort of moves these things forward, like finding your own niche? Because I think that that's important, you know, having mentors is important, and that's someone to bounce ideas off of. And, you know, asking your mentors if they have something that they need help with has led me to projects that I would not have normally worked on. You know, I don't think I would have been a part of the community working group if I'd not asked my mentor, Mike Anello, if he needed help with something. And he said he had a project he thought would be perfect for me. So, you know, asking your mentors, or asking, you know, asking yourself what projects you're passionate about, you know, can really lead that and shape that path to Drupal. An easy sort of, not easy, but one way to get involved in Drupal and find out more is to attend contribution events. Not all camps have them. You know, some camps might just have a workshop, but some camps have dedicated half-day trainings, you know, or dedicated half days just for contributions. I know Drupal Jam in the Netherlands is having contribution day tomorrow, and they're having a couple of workshops throughout the day on what you can do in the Drupal community, you know, code, community, all that kind of stuff. Drupal Camp New York City is next weekend, and it's free too. There'll be a first-time contributor workshop on Saturday, followed by mentored contributions, like not just tooling, but, you know, how to write a patch, how to review something, how do you simply test me, you know, the whole gamut. DrupalCon Europe is coming up. DrupalCon Europe is not free, but Contribution Day is free. So if you're in that time zone, you know, check out DrupalCon Europe. Pantheon is having a really unique program the whole month of December called The Gift of Open Source, where it's sort of a challenge. So if you can look that blog post up on the internet, Pantheon's Gift of Open Source. And then every weekend, every last weekend in January, the last weekend of every January is Global Contribution Weekend. And that's where people get together and they have virtual contribution sprints and code runs, you know, and that's the last weekend in January. You know, and contributing to Drupal.org is one of the main goals of keeping the project alive. You know, there's themes that you can work on, you know, there's projects and there's modules. And then, you know, working in the issue queue, you know, you don't have to be a coder to work in the issue queue. There are many non-code tasks or novice tasks for folks to do. You know, there's triaging issues, you know, going through the issue queue. And if you see something that's tagged Drupal 6, well, yeah, I don't think anyone's working on that. You know, you can triage that. You can review summaries and rewrite them, tag them for different things. You know, you notice it's an accessibility issue, so you tag it with the word accessibility, and that flags people who are interested in accessibility topics. You know, when they do an advanced search in the issue queue, now that issue comes up for you. You can review and test patches and code. You don't need a local environment to do that necessarily. You know, you can use your IDE. You can use Simply Test Me. You can create tests. Tests are a big part. You know, we want to make sure that there's some automated testing that goes in place. That way it makes the collaboration process a little bit easier. And then, you know, submitting pull requests and patches. They're a little bit daunting at first, but once you get the hang of how to write a patch, it's easy. And then now with pull requests, you know, most of us who have that workflow on GitHub, you know, you open a pull request and create a branch. And mentoring, you know I say this a lot, but mentoring has really led my path, because the more you don't know, the more you learn. The more I get into an issue with somebody, as much as I didn't know code before, guess what? I know more code now. When I teach the contribution workshops, you know, and I'm doing a live demo, someone asks me a question because I'm a mentor and I don't have the answer. Well, I help them find that out, you know, and being a good mentor, well, let me back up a little bit. Sometimes people are reluctant and don't want to be mentors. And, you know, it's not for everybody, but being a mentor doesn't mean you have to know all of the things. You know, mentors share what they know, how they know it, but they're also open about what they do not know. like for me, I do the first time contributor workshops, and there's an aspect of setting up a local environment where Matthew comes in and helps me do that, because that's a strong point of his, you know. So it's okay to admit that you don't know everything, and it makes you more human. And sharing your knowledge, you know, again, not everything's about code, you know. Sharing your knowledge is beneficial to everyone, especially like now that everything's recorded. So it's once and it has longevity on the web. You know, there's different ways that you can do that. You can do the mentoring, you can speak at camps, you can train, you can lead BOFs. I think BOFs are a lot of fun. And again, they don't always have to be about tech. The speaker diversity workshops, you know, you want to share your knowledge but not sure what to talk about or how to write a bio, you can attend a speaker diversity workshop or speaker workshop. They're really open for everybody. You know, that first step maybe is attending the workshop and learning how to write a bio, learning how to make a pitch that organizers will want to choose. And then maybe, you know, you give your talk, and guess what? You can now be a mentor or a volunteer or even facilitate those speaker diversity workshops. So think about the things that have helped you in your journey, and you can always cycle back to those and do those same tasks for other people. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm an extrovert and I love people, you know. I love just engaging with people, the Drupal community, the WordPress community, church, the school, just everyone. And, oh, this is the wrong slide, but that's okay. But I do love everyone. So I'm going to like skip to the slide I thought I was on. So I'm passionate. So there's a place where if you're passionate but don't know where to start and you want to run an event, even just a meetup, you know, on Meetupcom, there's an event organizer working group that meets the second Thursday of the month, where sometimes, you know, 30 people are collaborating and talking about what works and what doesn't work. Not only do they talk about people, not only are people from meetups there, but people from Drupal camps and even at the Drupalcon level. So there's a whole lot of experience there. Now I'll go back to the slide that I was on when I started to show the other stuff. But the community working group, most folks associate this with the conflict resolution team, but there's more aspects to the community working group than just the conflict resolution team. And I want to be clear, that's not the team I work on. I work in the community health team. And there's a lot of things there's a call for people to help out with this. You know, there's community health, there's community event support. You know, maybe you're meetup organizer, a Drupal camp organizer, or an attendee that thinks that you can add value. Community event support. We're looking for subject matter experts, you know, people who are subject matter experts on mental health, things like that. And then also ambassadors. We're looking for ambassadors to bridge communities together. You know, how does the CWG work with the diversity and inclusion team? How does the CWG work with the medical industry? How do we work with the Drupal Association? You know, so there's a lot to that community working group, and I invite everyone to check that out and be a part of it. And also, we're working on that community tooling to help with escalation in the issue queue. You know, where we're working on words that might de-escalate, things like that. And that's a lot of fun, knowing that our communication space will become more safe for some folks. DrupalCon, you know, every December, DrupalCon comes around, and DrupalCon Europe happens, but the volunteer ask comes out for DrupalCon North America. And there's all different things that you can do volunteering at DrupalCon. You know, there's being on the programming team, you know, running a summit. I've run the community summit a couple of times now. And the last time I ran it, I found new people to work with me. And now I'm going to step back and let them do it next year, you know, letting new people come as I find new things to do. That's part of that mentorship, finding a replacement for yourself and making that graceful bow out. You can mentor on contribution day, not only like give the workshop, but sit with a group of people and help them work through the issue, you know, have a round robin of what's a problem that you can report, you know, how do you create an issue? How do you review the issue? You know, work on fixing it all together. You know, they have table groups at DrupalCons or contribution days, and it's a lot of fun to work with folks. And it's a good way to meet new people from all over. Something they introduced this year was mentoring first-time attendees, people who had never come to DrupalCon. They matched us up with some new folks, and I was able to help 2 people kind of guide them a little bit in their experience. Because again, it's not just about knowledge transfer, it's about learning about culture too. And I always like to say, if you've been to a DrupalCon before, make an effort to wave to 1 person each day or introduce yourself and meet new people. And then also, how the second time you're at a camp, wave to 2 people, right? You know, or meet 2 people. Then the third time, meet 3 people. You know, really introduce people and embrace people and welcome them to the Drupal community. You know, you can speak, you can run a BOF. And then I'm not going to go through all of these, but here's sort of the call for volunteers, you know, for the program committee. You can see it goes anywhere from community to business to UX and design. You know, there's all different aspects of, you know, you can help vet speakers. You can help vet, help shape the program. How exciting is that? What do you want to see at DrupalCon? Well, guess what? You can help shape that if you want. Leading a summit. There's all different kinds of summits, and they kind of change them up year to year. You know, the community summit, say you want to embrace the community a little bit more, attending a community summit, because the community summit is sort of an unconference where we just talk about whatever we're going to talk about for the day. But you can see there's, you know, the healthcare, the library, the nonprofit conference as well. So that's sort of my call out for what folks can do. So I'm going to say thank you. And then I see some chat in the oh, Oscar, how can you make Drupal Camp Costa Rica on the DrupalCal? Well, DrupalCal is now antiquated. There's not a whole lot of work on there. Like Bad Camp doesn't show up on there anymore either, or none of my local meetups. But Drupal.org has a new community events page where you can post all of your stuff. So I'm going to look up the URL. And I'm not sure how this works. If you'll see